except one, have said yes to TTIP. The Conservative government is pushing it through all it can. The Liberal Democrats are pushing it through all they can. And the Labour Party are also saying that they want it with a couple of little carve-outs to save their blushes. And we say no, we do not wish to have this type of outrageous deal. In the official assessment, not our figures, in their figures, they say that TTIP is going to cost at least 1 million jobs. At least 1 million jobs when unemployment are already at record levels in here in the EU and across in the USA. And we know that that will be a minimum if they get the type of deal that they want to see. It's going to be 2 million jobs lost. How can they be doing that without any public scrutiny and then telling us that this is the best thing since sliced bread? Because if you believe them, there's an extra £10 billion for the British economy and there's an extra £500 for every family across Europe. Well, it's nonsense. We've told them it's nonsense. They've admitted it's nonsense and they still come back with the same figures.
Okay, my name's Jean Lambert. I'm a member of the Green Party in the European Parliament. And I'm also on the Employment and Social Affairs Committee where we deal with health and safety at work. So I'm looking at this ladder with a bit of nervousness. But what obviously today we're part of a huge international movement. And that's right, because this is an international trade agreement which is not just about 40% of the world's current GDP, it's also about trying to set the regime for world trade in the years to come. It's bad for developing countries, it's bad for any country which is not directly covered. And that is clear, we need to be aware of that, and that when we hear all the good things that are supposed to be happening, we have to ask, one, if we believe this, well, and if people who do say they believe it, what do they think it's going to mean for countries outside this regime? Because we have to be looking really internationally. And we know that change is possible. We've seen it. But only this week we actually saw the publication of the mandate for the negotiations, which has been agreed by 28 governments with the European Commission and is being discussed at the moment with the Americans. Now, we were told back in May that that mandate could not be published. There wasn't agreement amongst national governments. Lo and behold, Thursday this week, there is an amazing transformation and suddenly this is formally in the public domain. What are we doing this weekend? An international movement against TTIP. I don't think it's pure accident this was published on Thursday.
TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, it's not about trade, it's about deregulation. They have said quite explicitly that the point of these trade deals is no longer to remove tariffs, the border taxes between countries, because the tariffs between the European Union and the USA are already at rock bottom levels. Instead, the whole point of these negotiations is to get rid of the regulations, the standards, the rules and the rights that we have fought for over decades, but stop multinational corporations being able to make billions in profits. And they're taking aim at our environmental standards, they're taking aim at the food safety standards, they're taking aim at our labour rights, and they're taking aim at our digital privacy, so that all of the things that you thought you could do online are now going to be opened up for the internet service providers to spy on and report on. Every single one of our freedoms is under attack.
And when in the European Parliament just a few days ago we were discussing the trade agreement with Canada, CETA, suddenly, instead of having had the lone solo voices or the duet from the Greens and some of the United Left, we actually had a whole chorus of backing singers with some great music, also complaining about ISDS. It was as if village people had suddenly come out and were, ISDS, it's such a mess. We need to be building on that. But those MEPs didn't move because suddenly there was a flash of light. They moved because they saw the huge public opposition that was voiced in that consultation on ISDS. They moved because people were writing to them, saying to them, what the hell do you think you're doing? Not in my name. They are moving. That is good.
The good news is that we are winning and they are losing. Not just because there are tens of thousands of people out in the streets of Europe today, but also because they have already had to take out some of the most outrageous aspects of this deal. On chemicals, they've had to admit defeat. On the major new investor protection rights, they've had to step back, and they held a consultation which had 150,000 people saying no to the European Commission. We do not want these new rights and these new powers for corporations to sue us behind closed doors and cost billions of dollars for our basic policy choices. We will continue this fight. Many of us belong to the trade union movement, and the trade unions are out in force, in full and outright opposition to TTIP until we defeat it. And that's not just in this country, but it's across the whole of Europe. We're also all part of the environmental movement, also the social justice movement, the anti-fracking movement. Remember, today is also the global day against fracking, the global frackdown. And we know that TTIP is going to bring fracking absolutely to our doorsteps. It will no longer be possible for our elected governments to say no to fracking, because they will be sued just as the Canadian government is being sued by the American company Lone Pine. So this is a threat to our democracy. It's a threat to our environment. It's a threat to our labour standards. It's a threat to our food safety rules. In fact, whatever you like, basically is going to be threatened by TTIP. And I haven't even mentioned the public services side of it, because I think other people are going to come along and talk about that.
And you need to be reminding politicians that this agreement undermines their role, their powers. They might not choose to exercise them, but they have them. You need to remind them that ISDS, this whole thing takes power from elected politicians and gives it to corporations. To remind them that corporations aren't elected, politicians are, and we can be de-elected, if that's the word. We can be kicked out. We'd like them to be replaced by somebody better. You know, Clacton is not the model for this, but hey. That we remind them that corporations represent shareholder interests, not public interests, and that corporations seek profit and not the public good, and that any good politician should not be supporting TTIP, should not be supporting CETA, should not be supporting these agreements that remove power from the elected democratic process and hand it to big business. That's why we need